A keel fell off at sea. The crew had 30 seconds. The life raft was still in its stowage when the Navy found the hull a week later. Everyone assumes keel bolts are the weak link. The data says only 3 of 72 failures were bolt failures. The real killers are worse, and they're invisible. What if the safest keel ever built is the one they stopped making because it was too expensive? Night on the Gulf of Mexico. The crew of Cynthia Woods is moving through dark water, wind steady, routine checks done. At 14:32 UTC, a short radio call. Mayday, keel coming loose. 3 minutes later, a metallic snap echoes through the hull. Survivors later describe a sickening tilt. Then the deck becomes a wall. Within 30 seconds, the boat is upside down. 5 people are thrown into the sea. Roger Stone, the safety officer, shouts water and forces 2 crewmates out before the hull rolls completely. The life raft remains sealed in its stowage. U.S. Coast Guard logs show the first rescue helicopter lifts survivors from open water 5.5 hours later. 1 crew member is missing. The hull is found a week later, inverted, with the raft still strapped down inside. 6 years later in the North Atlantic, Cheeki Rafiki is returning from Antigua. At 1:23 UTC, a personal locator beacon signals distress. 2 minutes later, the vessel inverts. No time for a mayday. No time for a raft. The Marine Accident Investigation Branch reconstructs the sequence. 4 men in the water, hull upside down within half a minute of the initial failure. When the Navy finds the wreck, the life raft is still in its locker. No survivors. A survivor from Cynthia Woods recalls that it was instant. No warning, just water everywhere. Both cases unfold in silence and speed. No alarms, no visible warning. In less than a minute, a modern production yacht can go from upright and seaworthy to completely inverted. The crew scattered, safety equipment unreachable. The cause is not always visible, sometimes not even the bolts themselves fail. The real danger is a silent, hidden separation deep inside the hull. The tragedy is not just in the numbers, but in the fact that crews have no time to fight back. The sea, indifferent, closes over the evidence. Across 4 decades of accident reports, a pattern emerges that contradicts popular belief. The working record, drawn from the International Sailing Federation, the Marine Accident Investigation Branch, and the United States Coast Guard databases, lists over 72 documented cases where a keel separated from a modern production yacht since the mid-1980s. These incidents have claimed 28 lives. The scale is not anecdotal. It is systemic, global, and persistent. The technical breakdown is even more revealing. Of these 72 losses, only 3 were traced to a simple shear or fracture of the keel bolts themselves. In the remaining cases, the root cause was not a snapped bolt, but a hidden structural failure, fatigue cracks in welded fins, delamination between the keel stub and the hull matrix, or overload of the composite bond after a grounding. These are not points a surveyor can see or a routine inspection can catch. They are failures that propagate invisibly, sometimes for years, until a single wave or gust finishes the job. The public narrative, the idea that keel bolts are the weak link, does not survive contact with the data. Bolts are rarely the first point of failure. The real danger is the design itself. A bolt-on fin keel that concentrates all ballast loads on a small interface, like a heavy shelf hung from a few screws and drywall. When the bond or weld behind that shelf fails, the bolts are left to carry loads they were never meant to bear. Catastrophe follows in seconds, not minutes. Older encapsulated keels avoid this trap entirely. There, the ballast is part of the hull structure, distributing forces throughout the laminate. The shelf is not attached, it is the wall itself. No bolts, no welds, no hidden joints to fail. In the incident record, Encapsulated keels show no deaths from sudden detachment. The numbers are not abstract. 72 hulls inverted, 28 people lost, and only 3 cases where the bolts themselves broke first. The conclusion is unavoidable. The true killers are silent, hidden, and almost impossible to detect before it is too late. Weld toe cracks often begin as hairline fractures at the junction where a steel fin meets the keel plate. These cracks can develop over thousands of miles, each wave flexing the weld a fraction of a millimeter. In accident records, the initiation point is almost always the weld toe, the sharp edge where the fin welds to the plate. Once a crack forms, it grows with every cycle, sometimes for years, until the remaining metal can no longer carry the load. At that point, the failure is instantaneous, the entire fin shearing away in a single event. Matrix. Delamination is a slower, quieter process. Modern yachts rely on a composite grid or matrix bonded to the hull interior to spread the keel loads. When a boat grounds, even lightly, the shock can fracture the adhesive bond between this matrix and the outer hull. The separation is often invisible from above. Over time, water seeps in, and the bond line begins to fail. The matrix loses its grip, and the forces that should be distributed across the structure start to concentrate at the remaining points of contact. Cumulative groundings are a common thread in the case files. Cynthia Woods had 3 documented groundings before her final voyage. Cheeki Rafiki had at least 4. Each impact, no matter how minor, pushes the structural bond closer to its limit. The load that should be shared across the matrix is forced onto fewer and fewer fibers, raising local stress to critical levels. When the next wave or gust hits, the structure can no longer compensate. The result is a sudden, catastrophic loss of the keel. These failure modes do not announce themselves. There is no visible warning, no crack in the paint or telltale rust. The progressive weakening happens out of sight, deep within the hull until the final overload. At that moment, the load path collapses and the boat's stability is lost in seconds. The shift from pocket nut bolts to cast and J-bolts changed more than just the assembly line. Early production yachts allowed surveyors to remove bolts for inspection, checking for corrosion or fatigue before failure could begin. With J-bolts, the steel is bent into a hook, then cast deep inside the lead keel, never to be seen again. The bolt's path winds through lead, glass, and adhesive, finally emerging inside the hull, often beneath a layer of fairing compound. Any corrosion that starts at the hidden interface is sealed away from oxygen, accelerating decay in the dark. Water that leaks past a failed gasket or through a hairline crack can sit for years, slowly eating the steel. By the time a surveyor notices a weep or a halo of rust at the bolt head, the cross-section may have collapsed by half. Non-destructive testing such as ultrasound and X-ray offers little comfort. Lead absorbs most imaging energy, and the complex geometry of a J-bolt makes it nearly impossible to spot a crack until it is too late. Keel's own service records show that even professional yards, with the boat on the hard, often cannot detect internal corrosion without dropping the entire keel. That operation, requiring cranes, skilled labor, and days out of the water, costs thousands of dollars, well beyond the reach of most owners. As a result, most J-bolts are never checked at all after installation. The risk is not just theoretical. The ISAF case record lists multiple failures where the bolt appeared sound from above, yet snapped with little warning under final load. The design itself conceals the danger. Each J-bolt is a single point of failure, embedded in a sealed environment that defeats both visual and technical inspection. The result is a hidden threat, a structural element that can corrode, crack, and ultimately let go, all while passing every routine check. In the aging fleet, the true condition of these bolts remains unknown, a silent risk that grows with every year at sea. By the late 1980s, the world's marinas and harbors filled with a new breed of sailboat, sleek, fast, and built for a production. Most of these boats were laid up between 1975 and 1995, a period when manufacturers like Beneteau, Hunter, and Catalina turned out thousands of hulls each year. Today, these vessels make up the backbone of the global cruising fleet. The numbers are substantial, more than 30,000 production yachts with bolt-on fin keels, many now between 25 and 45 years old, still in active service. The typical owner is not a racer or a high-budget adventurer, but someone who bought a well-kept cruiser from the 1980s or the 1990s for a fraction of its original price. Their boat might have crossed oceans, weathered storms, and survived more than a few groundings. It is not uncommon to find a 1987 Beneteau First or a 1992 Hunter Legend still listed as turnkey, with original keel bolts and no record of a dropped keel. Yet every year that passes, the risk window widens. Fatigue in metals and composites is cumulative and relentless. The design, life for a production fin keel yacht is rarely stated in sales brochures, but industry engineers know the numbers. After 30 to 40 years, cyclic loads from waves and groundings compound. Micro cracks, invisible to the naked eye, can propagate through welds and matrix bonds over decades. The odds of a hidden flaw increase with every season. For the owner, the prospect of a full keel inspection is daunting. Pawl out, keel drop, and non-destructive testing can cost several $1,000s, often more than the boat's resale value. As a result, most owners rely on annual visual surveys and hope that a clean bilge or an unblemished hull means all is well below the waterline. In reality, the aging fleet is an experiment in deferred maintenance. With thousands of boats now entering the critical fatigue window, the scale of the risk is not theoretical. It is already afloat and growing older by the day. There is no rule book that requires a yacht owner to ever check the keel. No flag state, no insurance policy. No international code mandates a periodic inspection of the joint that holds a boat upright. The only requirement is at the time of construction, a calculation, a visual check, a single sign-off. After that, the fleet is left to its own devices. For most owners, the cost of a full keel inspection is prohibitive. Hauling the boat, dropping the keel, and performing non-destructive testing can cost anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000, sometimes more than the boat's resale value. Ultrasonic scans and X-rays add thousands to the bill, and even then the results are often inconclusive. Lead absorbs imaging energy, and the geometry of embedded J-bolts defeats most probes. The practical alternative, a visual survey, cannot see through fairing compound or lead. It cannot detect a hairline crack in a weld or a matrix bond that has begun to peel away after a forgotten grounding. Surveyors know these limits. They record what they can see: a clean bilge, a dry keel joint, no visible rust. The underlying structure remains a question mark. Owners, faced with the cost and uncertainty, often defer or skip decisive inspections. The result is a culture of complacency, reinforced by the absence of enforced standards. Even after high-profile fatalities, no regulatory body has instituted a schedule for keel attachment checks. The inspection void is not an oversight, it is the default. The industry has normalized a system where the most critical structural element is left unmonitored for decades. The risk persists not because it is unknown, but because acknowledging it would require expensive, disruptive action. The cost is measured in lost boats and lost lives, but the accounting is silent. In this vacuum, the hazard remains hidden, uninspected, and growing older every year. A different approach to ballast changes the equation entirely. In an encapsulated keel, the ballast is not an appendage, but part of the hull itself. The structure forms a continuous shell, fiberglass or epoxy laid over a cavity, then filled with lead or iron and sealed shut. There are no bolts, no welds, no adhesive seams at the waterline. The hull and the keel are one monolithic unit, their fibers and resin sharing every load, every shock, every grounding. The difference is not subtle. Picture a heavy shelf. In the bolt-on world, it is fastened to a wall with a few screws. As long as the screws in the drywall hold, the shelf stays up. But if the screws pull out or the wall crumbles, the entire load drops in an instant. That is the bolt-on fin keel, a massive weight suspended from a handful of attachment points, each one critical. When the interface fails, there is no warning and no time to react. Now, imagine the shelf is not attached at all. It is molded as part of the wall. The forces spread across the entire structure, not just a few points. There is no single seam or bolt that can let go. Even if a section of laminate cracks or the hull takes a pounding, the ballast remains integrated. Failure is gradual, not instantaneous. The boat might leak, might lose stiffness, but it does not flip over in seconds. This design eliminates the sudden loss interface. There is no hidden joint to corrode, no weld to fatigue, no matrix to delaminate. The load path runs through the entire hull, distributing stress over a broad area. In 4 decades of incident records, not a single encapsulated keel yacht has been lost to sudden ballast detachment. The trade-off is repair complexity. Fixing a damaged encapsulated keel can mean major surgery, cutting open the hull, drying out the core, and rebuilding with new glass and resin. But the risk of instant inversion, the 30-second catastrophe, is simply not present. For those who choose this construction, the peace of mind is built into the very bones of the boat. Roger Stone's name is carved into the memorial at Texas A&M, a reminder that safety at sea is not an abstract calculation, but a personal debt. Stone was the safety officer aboard Cynthia Woods. When the keel tore away, he used his last moments to force 2 younger crew members out of the sinking hull. He did not survive the night. The official citation for the gold life-saving medal describes his actions in plain language. At the risk of his own life, he ensured the survival of others. The cost of these failures is measured in more than numbers. Each lost name is a line in the water, evidence that the current system leaves crews exposed to hazards they cannot see and cannot fight. Survivors of Cynthia Woods have spoken about the silence that followed inversion. No alarms, no time to launch the raft, no chance to make a final call. The raft, still strapped down inside the hull, became a symbol of everything that is wrong with the inspection and safety regime. There is nothing inevitable about these deaths. The record is clear on what works and what does not. Mandatory, non-destructive testing after every grounding, regardless of severity, would catch many of the hidden failures that now go undetected. Life rafts must be mounted where they can be reached with the boat inverted, not locked away in a locker below. Owners, surveyors, and builders each have a role. The owner who insists on a full keel inspection, even at significant cost, may pay in dollars but not in lives. The builder who returns to encapsulated ballast, or at least designs for a higher safety factor, closes off the most lethal failure modes. The surveyor who refuses to sign off on a visual-only check after a grounding prevents another silent loss. Roger Stone's name is not just a casualty statistic. It is a reminder that the line between a safe passage and disaster is often drawn by choices made long before the sea goes quiet. The industry knows what needs to be done. The evidence is in the water and in the names we remember. There is no comfort in silence, only the obligation to act. 72 yachts, 28 lives, 3 failures traced to bolts, yet the rest vanished to hidden, progressive breaks no survey could catch. Designing a shelf into the wall rather than just screwing it on still prevents this kind of collapse. Today, the industry accepts invisibility as an acceptable risk. But the laws of structure remain indifferent. Catastrophic failure does not care about the year, only about the interface you choose to trust.